started. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All members are present except for Greg.
Greg left me a voicemail. He might be 20 minutes late.
I know, that's what we're
Minutes of May 5th. Oh. Is that what was amended on the agenda? It's just May 12th. Oh, I have two May 12ths. Does everyone have the minutes for May 5th?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Two
Barry,
abstentions.
James and Hunt.
Correct.
Correct.
Minutes of May 12th. Does everyone have those minutes?
Yes.
And is there a motion to approve?
So I have a question. Total revenue budget number $43,671,686 is the same number that was on the budget for when we discussed that error in the Youth and Family Services. So this is not a corrected number, is that right?
John, I am not prepared for your question, so I'd have to check that tomorrow. I'm sorry. If you had called me today, I could have checked. I just don't have it.
The May 12th meeting you're talking about? Okay, that was the meeting after the referendum.
Yeah.
The other thing on that is I would like to see a revised,
I took these numbers from Bob's.
as you've done in the past, like this sheet with the revised numbers by department.
Okay.
All right. So we
Could you
will.
just shoot an email to like Lisa and then that'd be and you'll have it tomorrow.
So we'll table those minutes pending actual number. Okay. Is there any public comment?
Question. There's a lot of people out here, and so instead of them standing in the hallway, do you have an area you want them to stand in because you can't hear anything out there? I don't know. Just pile around. Is it bad if they're behind you guys and stuff, or?
You could move down and remove we can remove this table and bring some chairs up. Oh, it's only 6?
You're gonna have 7. Oh, 6. Okay. Greg will be here, so
I'm not going to be presumptuous, but I'm going to move up to the materials. And then I'll create the chair.
Is there any other public comment?
I just have a question. I know that we're probably gonna get some kind of presentation, given the police presence on the boat lease. Are we gonna get opportunities to ask questions later, or is there just no opportunity
Yeah, I
for
would
that?
just say if you have questions, you can ask them now, I suppose, and if in the presentation they can address those questions.
Okay. First, I'd like to know with these 3 lease options, the age of these boats, and if we're gonna be maintaining them for somebody else. Are we gonna get an old boat that we're not gonna be able to, that we're gonna have to then maintain for somebody?
My guess is that would be part of the presentation.
Okay, what was my other questions? Oh, and then, how many hours did we have on our boat last year? Just because there are stipulations in some of these leases about the number of hours that you can have.
Well, I haven't seen the presentation, but I'm confident that that'll be gone over.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Sure, or we can answer right now if you'd like during.
Why don't we do it as part of the presentation, because maybe one question will be answered by another.
I would like to ask that we be allowed to see what is being proposed, because certainly I haven't heard or found what is being proposed. And if we don't have an opportunity to comment after the presentation, can we be assured that the decision, whatever decision is to be made, is not made this evening?
You can be assured that there'll be no decision made tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Carol?
Well, I too would like to issue, even though it seems as though you don't want to do this, that there be a public comment time at the end. It's the most logical place to make comments.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Yeah.
But we'll make that XA maybe, or X?
Yep. So, all those in favor of adding public comment after the Marine Patrol presentation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You seconded it, please?
I do.
Thank you.
Is that an agenda in front of you?
Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Name's Captain Tom Kellenbach from CETO. I've been very politically active, but I've been here for 24 years in the Connecticut River now. I just wanted to make a statement that we need a Marine Patrol out there. I don't know that if anyone doubts that or not, just come take a stand right between the bridges marina on Saturday or Sunday afternoon and watch all the violations that are going on right now and everything that's going on. The jet skis ripping through there. We had a boat capsize in the river. I don't know if anybody knows this weekend, and 4 people were in the water. Does anyone know how long they were in the water for? 35 minutes. They're in the water for 35 minutes with no help, and no Marine Patrol out there to rescue them or anyone else out there to get them. So, not good that we don't have a Marine Patrol. I just want to say I think it's ridiculous that this whatever's been going on in this town. And again, I've never been to a meeting like this before. I just keep my head down and do my business. But people, get it done. Okay, the busiest recreational waterway on the east coast of the United States. Busiest recreational waterway. We don't have a Marine Patrol, and the 4th of July is coming. Get it done.
Thank
That's
you.
all I gotta say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't seen the survey, but I hope it addresses the cost of repairing the existing boat. And I would also just wonder why this wasn't addressed in November when the boat was put up for winterization. I work in the boating industry, and when the boats are put to bed in winter, usually all these issues are addressed at that time. And it seems a little late to be finding out now.
Thank you. Yes, sir?
Not knowing what is going to be proposed, I would just remind the board that the citizens of Saybrook have already spoken on large expenditures relative to the Marine Patrol. So take that into consideration during your deliberations.
I would say the citizens voted specifically not to buy a particular boat that was on the actual vote, and that they really didn't vote on any other options other than what was provided to them by the town to vote on.
Okay. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Sadly, word is out. I've heard stories that the violations are on the rise. Word is out that there is no marine patrol. I myself witnessed 3 separate assists by your company and others simultaneously in the mouth of the river with violations happening all around it on Saturday. I urge the board to come to a solution as quickly as possible, please.
Paul?
I just would like the explanation about the line of delineation between the fireboat and the police boat.
Okay. Any other public comment? All right. There'll be more opportunity for public comment later. Tax collector report, suspense accounts.
As you know, each year, according to statute, the tax collector presents a list of accounts that are to be reclassified on the books as suspended versus active. This does not mean that they are not collectible. Whenever possible, we do collect them. You have before you the 3 varieties and a printout of the individual accounts for the personal property, the motor vehicle, and the motor vehicle supplemental bills. A lot of them are businesses that are no longer in business, businesses that have filed bankruptcy. A lot of the motor vehicles have been driven to another state and registered out of state. We don't have current addresses on them to mail, you know, forward bills and so forth. You know that I've been before you in previous years with this list. It is something the auditors look for on an annual basis and part of their review of annual audit procedure. And when I say they remain collectible and are collected whenever possible, so far in this fiscal year, we've collected $2,974.27 in delinquent tax that had been categorized as suspended. But the real prize is $5,799.97 in interest on those bills, which is additional revenue that the town has a line item budget for in so far as interest collected. To put a little bit of perspective on it, the total for the 3 categories of accounts being suspended is $22,704.29. In that grand list year of October 1, 2009, due and payable July 1 of 10 through June 30 of 11, we levied $34,573,877 in taxes. That just offers a little bit of perspective on the overall number. I gave to the clerk earlier this evening 2 copies, which I asked the chairman to at least sign and acknowledge this presentation. 1 copy goes on file in the town clerk's office. The other copy goes into the tax collector records that the auditors will review.
Any questions for Barry on this?
Question. Barry, when you say you levied, was that in conjunction with the outside firm that you used for collection, or was that just a process of?
The outside firm we use for collection pays attention to real estate only. We do not suspend or recategorize real estate because they are secured by lien on the land records in the town clerk's office. The 3 categories before you are the personal property and the 2 types of motor vehicle bills, the motor vehicle regular and the motor vehicle supplemental bills.
I know last year we had talked about putting this online. Is there any more discussion?
There has not been since then. Actually, it could be considered a tool, it could also be considered an embarrassment. Yes, one might create the other, action to resolve the issue. Has that happened as yet? No, it has not.
I guess the other question is, some people say that people have moved out of town, out of state, and it's hard to track, but, is there any way when you go through this list and you look up the people who are still, presumably paying a property tax, you can add this on to the tax bill as an addendum that's owed? When they see what they owe for the property tax online, is there any way to sort of asterisk it and say, this is the amount of back taxes?
Well, it's all active, or open balance is available from the town website. If you were looking for a specific name and there was an open delinquent balance, it would be there on the website as a receivable. There comes a point in time when we get mail back undeliverable, where people have sold their real estate or the real estate that was associated or affiliated with a mailing address. The property is now owned by other persons. It doesn't make sense to continually print and spend the postage on mailing a delinquent statement when we don't have a better address for it.
Any other questions?
How many personal property tax bills do you send out?
There's about 1,200.
And what about the one for the automobiles?
The regular list is 12,000 plus. Motor vehicle supplemental is maybe 1,200.
And what were their real estate bills?
This year there's a little over 7,000.
Any other questions?
Yes. Gary, what would you say the percentage on the automobiles collected versus uncollected?
Tom, I'd have to work those numbers for you.
That's fine. I
I'd
didn't know
have
if
to
you
work
knew
those
that
numbers.
offhand or not.
I don't know offhand,
Thank you.
but feel free to stop by the office.
I'll take care of that.
Mhm.
All right, if there's no objection, I will sign these 2 copies.
Typically, I think we have moved the suspense list.
Oh, okay.
It's my recollection in the past, we
Yeah.
had a Board of Finance motion on that, so.
I would agree with that, because what
Okay.
you're doing here is reducing the accounts receivable on the balance sheet. It has an effect on your fund balance.
That's what.
Is there a motion to move the suspense
So
list?
moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If I could push the boundary of the agenda item just a touch. The charter revision change, which specified a date for the budget referendum, and the subsequent setting of the mill rate, the assessor's office got the bill file out to the printer last Thursday. Friday, the data processor called the tax office, and the bills were printed on Monday. They called me about noon today. I drove to Waterbury, and we have the file. The file should be loaded tomorrow. We're going to delay the mailing of the bills for a few days until Thursday, June the 11th, for a couple of reasons. Rick Pine, the clerk in the assessor's office, is away at UConn for a week's worth of schooling through Friday. He will be back in the office on Monday. He's gonna need a couple of days to get the transfers, the sale of properties caught up with, to get his feet back underneath him and to handle the daily paperwork that accumulated. We had a conversation about this, and we agreed that Thursday the 11th would be a possible mailing date for the next grand list year bills. which fall due July 1. Now, in the past, you know that we've sent the bills out early. Last year, what it did was we had collected $4.4 million prior to July 1. That keeps the town from having to go out and borrow money and suffer the expense of interest for the borrowing of money to meet the bills that fall due July 1. You know, depending on how the calendar falls, it could be a payroll that falls due and other commitments. But as far as going forward, and this year goes, we seem to be pretty well wrapped up and in decent shape. We have some organizing to do in the tax office and in the assessor's office, but I think we'll be able to stick with the time frame that we've identified.
Fantastic. Great job. Any other questions for Barry? Is there a finance, thank you, Barry. Is there a finance director report at all?
No, insofar as Bob or I will deliver a report, that's it.
So, treasurer's report?
Okay, well, why don't we start with, the new auditors? This was something that the finance director was working on. As you may or may not know, we have chosen a new set of auditors now, Mahoney Saybrook. And what I have given you up there is the agreement. What I have given you is the agreement to sign between the auditors and us. And I've given you some extra copies there if you want to pass those around if somebody's interested. I doubt if you will be very interested. It's just a kind of a legal agreement. But very quickly, let me just say that this agreement is for them to audit our financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2015. Okay? And what it's saying is, it's giving a list of what management is responsible for providing, basically the financial statements. And it is then saying what the auditors will do for you with those. It talks about the fact that we are responsible for internal controls to prevent and detect fraud. And they will be analyzing our system. They've given us a timetable. They will start in July with looking at the transactions. Most of their work will be done in October, and the delivery of the report should be around middle of December 2015. Okay? Our responsibility will be to supply whatever information they need and give them a place to work. The fees for this first year will add up to $44,000, which is within the budget. They ask that they bill $15,000 in July, $15,000 in October, and $14,000 upon issuance of the audit reports. This letter agreement is quite similar to all the letter agreements we've had in the past, so I would recommend that the board agree to this and sign.
Town attorney look at that? Town attorney, was it you?
I'm sorry,
Did the town attorney look at that, or review it at all?
No, the town attorney hasn't looked at it. I mean, we've reviewed it, we could have it reviewed by the town attorney.
It's a boilerplate.
Is it the same as the other one,
Yeah,
with a
it's
different
very
name on top?
similar. I
Yes.
have no concern with it. Yeah. No concern.
Now, will these guys help us when we transition the accounting system?
We have our own advisors.
Yeah. Jeff Ziplo from Plum Shapiro.
Yeah.
But I would say that assistance will be there wherever we need it.
Yeah.
I believe that Mahoney Sable will be very happy to assist us. And I think Plum Shapiro will be happy to assist us also. I don't think we'll have any problem with getting assistance. But I think Mahoney Sable will gladly do it. They're in a 4-year contract. This is a 4-year contract we're signing.
We selected Mahoney Sable after interviewing them and others, and we're very pleased with the hands-on approach that they take.
That question was asked when we interviewed them. I think they said they would help us with it.
Yes.
There was no charge. What did we pay last year for the audit?
45,000?
Yeah. Okay. So it's in line with what we paid.
Oh, yeah.
All the food would be close.
Yeah. Any other questions for Bob on this particular item? So, if there's no objection, I will sign this.
Okay, the treasurer's report for the year, present year through May 31st. Again, you have copies to hand out. Does everybody have them? Okay. Okay, let's look at the second page, which is the report itself. On the expenditure side, with 11 months of the year gone, we see general government has expended about 90%. Last year was 88 plus, so we're running a little higher than last year in the expenses. But Carl has sent out a couple of memos now, trying to control especially the payables at the end of the year. You know, last year that was a very large number that came in late, and we're trying to control that better this year. The Board of Education, as you know, they've never overrun their budget, so I'm not worried about them. The bonded indebtedness, we're about $4,000 over budget right now, and we have another $10,165 WPCA bond payment due this fiscal year. So we'll end up about $14,000 over that budget. That is a consequence of the fact that we had to pay an accrued interest payment for the preserve in order to allow the first real bond payment to go in the new fiscal year. So although we were $28,000 under as far as our WPCA payments were budgeted, we had the $42,000 for the preserve, and so we're going to end up about $14,000 under budget.
Over that.
Over budget, I'm sorry.
Did we get some revenue from premiums on the bonds though?
Very little.
It was $10,000.
Very disappointing.
And it went toward our closing costs summary.
Yeah.
All right, we had carryover expenses from past years for roads and sidewalks. Those have now been completed. They're not really against this year's budget. They won't add to any budget deficit that we might have.
You just won't have to look at it for the next 5
Right.
years.
But that will affect our unappropriated fund balance, of course. On the revenue side, we are in very good shape. The total taxes that we receive by year end will be well above the budget. Where we were running a little behind with payments from the state, we're back on budget. And local revenues are normal, and they're even running higher than last year because of the new miniature golf course. So when I look at the two together, I anticipate that we will end up with a surplus for the general fund budget for the year. Now, there are individual line items for you to look at, but I don't think there's anything new that we haven't talked about before.
Any questions for Bob on this report?
And again, anytime, if there's any questions over the next few days, if you look at those, obviously Bob and I are always available. If you do you have questions.
Carl?
Yes.
Did you send out a memo to department heads, so
Yes.
that any department that was running over budget to explain their overage to the Board of Finance or to you?
Yes. I did.
Are they coming to the Board of Finance?
Well, you've received a couple already.
I've received a couple of emails which I meant to bring tonight.
I thought maybe you had just distributed those? Oh, okay. That's how I thought it was going to work. You got one from zoning, with regard to their legal line item. And you certainly may hear from, you know, I'll be honest with you, John, I don't know how many are gonna go over. I'm hoping, let's just say that. That, I mean, you can track the expenditures on your sheet and you can kind of see which departments are a little bit more in trouble. I think the police department's going to be a little bit over, but zoning was over. You know, traffic and streetlights, that account, and you know, help me out here, I mean, I believe CLMP did a mid-year rate increase, didn't they just get one pushed through in January? And I have a feeling that must be affecting our traffic and streetlights account, because that budget is never expended like it is this year, and it's a little bit over this year. So, I was watching that today, in fact, but, you know, Bob and I have continually have this discussion. He presents me with this report. I looked at from April 1 to May 1, and then from May 1 to June 1, and I saw a contraction in the amount that the expenditures were up. So I'm hopeful that that is a trend that we can continue through June. I did send out a memo for the last quarter of the year and the last month of the year. Just telling people, manage your budget as best you can. Or, you know, the board, and I mentioned, and you've seen those memos, haven't you? Because I sent them to Dave. I thought I sent them to the whole board. Yeah. So the answer is yes.
Where is zoning on here? How much are they over?
They're, you know, I don't, you know, I forgot my.
It's on.
Yeah.
What number?
It's 4218.
And Christine Nelson sent out a memo, has partly to do with some floodplain issues, and partly to do with some pesky legal issues that they are addressing with homeowners who they feel there needs to be some enforcement against, which is a last resort.
And it's mostly fire ordinance.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
Did you find
Yes.
it? Oh, okay.
4218.
The police budget looks like it's over about running 3% high.
I don't know, Brad, I haven't examined it, but that,
Are you gonna end up about 3% over this year?
not sure yet.
Right now, you're at 3% over, which would be about, looks like about 100,000.
I don't know what else.
Fire marshal's at 99, fire marshal's at 99% with a month to go, so.
I have had personal meetings with the fire marshal about that. Okay. 2.
Any other questions for Bob on this report?
There are other budgets that will be under also.
Anything else, Bob?
No?
All right, thank you.
So can I just, I'll be reasonably quick, I know we have a full agenda. The auditors, speaking of them, we met with them last week, I believe. And we did mention to them that I think the Board of Finance would like to have a meet and greet and perhaps they can introduce themselves to you. Maybe target July for that. You know, they're happy to come in anytime, I believe, so whenever you would like to have the auditors in, please do. We began dispatcher negotiations, today's Tuesday, last week. We have 3 more sessions scheduled for this month in the hopes of reaching an agreement by July 1. But those negotiations are underway. I attended Yale New Haven Hospital. Their branch is now fully open. I attended that grand opening last week, and it's quite a clinic they're running over there. And I mean that is going to be a huge asset for the town, the entire population. Thank you for your consent with the library cost-saving initiative. That went to town meeting, and they are now, they'll be at work very shortly on that. Many of you saw North Cove has received $7.5 million to be dredged, which is really a remarkable victory in many ways for the town. Certainly for North Cove, which is a port of refuge, a harbor of refuge. In '09, it took 12 years for that money to come to get it dredged in '09, and it was not fully dredged in '09. It was dredged to 8 feet, I want to say, or 10 feet in certain areas. These funds will be implemented to dredge it to its full depth, 12 feet, most of it. I mean, full depth might be an exaggeration, but I believe it's a 12-foot target that they're shooting for in a lot of it. Now, this came about very quickly. You know, when we spent however much money in bond money that was spent in '09, certainly less than $7.5 million, it took 12 years. This was rapid. And one of the reasons it was rapid is apparently there are other sites in the state of Connecticut that need to be capped with fill, and the fill that is in the North Cove is remarkably clean as a result of the Connecticut River being reasonably clean. And when the Army Corps of Engineer and DEP want to make something happen, they can make something happen apparently. And the money is allocated. It will probably occur not in the 15-16 winter, but probably in the 16-17 winter is the estimate for that. But that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. The other comment of note is the state budget, which maybe as we speak is being passed. I know the budget at about 5 o'clock today has been submitted to the House, so I believe they may be voting tonight. There are some changes. The car tax issue that I've previously addressed this board is going to happen, the statewide mill rate. Now, it won't be happening in October of this year. I believe it will be October of 16. That the old Saybrook taxpayers will be sending their money to the state, not to Barry Maynard. And the state will, and I say this somewhat skeptically, deliver that money back to the town and to hold us harmless. Yeah. So that is a stable mill rate. If the mill rate on real estate goes up, the mill rate on the car tax does not go up. And it's collected by the state. That change, I believe, will be implemented over the course of the next year. That's a big change. One of the other big changes deals with the sales tax. The concept being that they are taxing, and I don't say that pejoratively, I just say it because this is true. They're taxing more goods and services. I mean, we've all read this. On the table was veterinarians, engineers, clothing under $50, lots of things. And the sales tax, the concept is to eventually reduce it. However, they are talking about giving the municipalities a large piece of money, a large sum of money, relative to your tax base every year. And I believe the sum for Old Saybrook was $250,000 coming back to the town from the increase in the amount of taxes collected at the state level. It comes with a string attached, and it will, the same string to every town, not to Old Saybrook, obviously. And that string is that the municipal budget cannot go up more than a certain percentage. Some of the questions that have been asked about that, though, is what happens when a town goes to bond? And your budget might, overall, might be up 5%. So does that money get pulled from us? And so I think there's going to be a lot of exceptions. I don't know if the exceptions will eventually swallow the rule or not. But I mean, last I knew, that was going through. So there are some relatively big changes coming from Hartford. I think it's a somewhat controversial piece of legislation. The Hartford Current editorial page came out against it, which is pretty amazing. And I don't know if it's going to get passed. I don't know if the votes are there or not. I'm not making this from I'm not making a political statement here. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. So when I know more, and you'll read it too, we'll share it maybe over the meetings in July and August, and we'll have a better conversation about it then. So, all right? But those are some of the changes coming from Hartford, and they're big. They're big changes.
How about your appropriation to retirement?
Oh, is that on the?
Right here.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so, thank you. This is something I've spoken to this board about all year. There was a retirement in town hall. In all our contracts, whether it's police or whether it is town hall unions, and this is not just my administration, this goes back since town hall workers were unionized back in 1991, I think. There is a retirement payout. And this year, not just this year, but as you know, I have tried to move certain items off budget into a sinking fund so that we can collect money and have enough money for retirement payout or for any catastrophic injury when we have our heart and hypertension claims. So we moved the retirement payout off budget. It's not in the operating budget. We did that 2 years ago, I want to say. The problem is when it's expended fully, it cannot be overrun. You have to find it in the, I'm not going to overrun an off-budget account. So what we did is we used the contingency fund and we overran that budget. As you see in your sheet, the contingency, which is at 20, I believe is at 34. So what I'm asking this board to do, because the contingency account doesn't really reflect accurately, I mean, I suppose you could call that a contingency, but we do have a retiree payout account that I would like to have this board appropriate funds to make the contingency fund back where it should be and have the retirement payout come from where it should be. So the contingency account is $17,000 over the amount budgeted of $20,000. So in order to keep the contingency account from being skewed by this one retirement payout, we are asking to make an additional appropriation to the capital outlay account of $18,621, which will be placed into the retirement payout account number 840 to cover for retirement payouts during the year that went over the $10,000 appropriation. Now, I believe in this year's budget, it's $30,000 in the retirement, in the capital sinking fund.
That's correct.
Correct? Yeah. So we're trying to put money aside for these things so that we don't find ourselves, just like we did for catastrophic illness, same thing. And that is working out pretty nicely so far. So that's what I'm asking this board to do. I mean, If you don't do it, the contingency fund is going to be overrun. I've told you probably from October of this year why the contingency account is where it is. It's a question of getting the retirement payout account to where it should be. And next year, it should probably be increased to $50,000 or at least $40,000. Because if you get 1 or 2 retirements, that budget is gone. So I'm trying to create these funds off budget so we can pay these accounts. It's an unpredictable number. It could be very high one year, it could be nothing another year. So that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a motion for this board to appropriate the $18,621 into the retirement payout account.
So if we didn't do it.
The contingency account is just over budget.
We could do it at the end of the year like other budgets.
You could, yes, you could.
Or we could do it at our next meeting.
You could do it at your next meeting too. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's simply putting the money, I believe, where it should be, reflective of the fact that there was a retirement, or 2 retirements, actually. There were 2. And you know, one of the other items I'd like to talk to you about is, and Brad, it's something you commented on after we were leaving the last meeting. The front of town hall looks like junk. The paint's peeling, and there's 3 sections to the front of town hall, and I'd like to get some of that painted. And I have a quote for $3,400 for the front section. There's a front where the door is, there's a middle section above that, and then there's a part that says town hall above that is flaking also. This is just for the door portion. And where would I take that from? Probably a contingency account. Because there's no, I mean, I can take it from town hall maintenance, but that budget, what?
That would then run over.
Well, it's gonna be close, that budget's gonna be close, but I'm happy to do it because I think it really reflects as people come into town hall. But I wanna say something else about the front of town hall. It's all lead paint, which was not remedied 10 years ago, when this building was fixed. So there is a way to encapsulate that.
$3,800?
Just that front portion, to
That
encapsulate.
includes that?
Yes, just that. If you really wanted to do, if you really wanna scrape it down and get it to where it should be and redo it, you don't wanna know the number. This guy said to me, that could be 6 figures to get it done. I'm not going there. If you guys wanna talk about that at some future point, we can talk about it. You can encapsulate it. You can scrape it a little bit and encapsulate it, which is a Band-Aid, but a 10-year Band-Aid. 10-year Band-Aid. Or if you wanna do it right now, it's a much different number. But it was not done on this building when this building was renovated. And I just found that out about, because I was getting quotes. And I had one guy come back to me after he gave me a quote, and he said, you know what, I think there's lead paint. Let me come back. He said, yeah, there is lead paint. He goes, forget the quote I gave you, and I don't even want to touch that job. And he referred me to this guy. So I did get 3 different people involved, and they were all, one of them said, I want nothing to do with it. The other one said, I want nothing to do with it, and you should call Art Conroy. So, you know, we can talk about this at the next meeting too, but I think the front of the town hall doesn't look so good, and I've had many people tell me that. It's not just me walking in every day or Brad walking out that time. But he did give me a quote for $3,400 just to do that front section.
All right, is there a motion to appropriate $18,621 to the retirement payout account? Is there a second? Second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
And thank you for that. I think it just puts the funds where they should be.
I'll take your job.
You'll take care of that, okay, thanks.
Anything else?
No.
Any Any questions
You
for
can
Carl?
move on.
Yes.
All right.
In light of the issue that the street and traffic light account may run over, do we have any new information about changing the street lights over to the new system yet?
To LEDs. Yeah, well, why don't we talk about that at the next meeting?
Yeah, but I mean, just,
Yeah, as I said, I want to be very cautious about that. There are towns that are doing it and flipping that switch.
I know you said you were waiting for some other towns.
CLNP is also going to come with a proposal. Eversource is going to come with a proposal to the Council of Governments in July. And so I'd like to hear what they have to say about a proposal. It's a great idea, it seems great, but I want to be very cautious about that before we end up owning every streetlight in this town. So, but no new information since last we spoke.
Right.
Carl, at your last Board of Selectmen meeting, you approved a contract, a lease for
Yeah.
storage for
Yeah.
emergency management.
Yeah.
I would just like to know from the town attorney, I'd like to see his,
Okay.
mention that he approved it.
Yes,
I'd like to see his reasoning.
absolutely, I'll get that for you.
Thank you.
I'll make a note.
Any other questions for Carl? All right, thank you. Marine Patrol.
Good evening. So we are back in front of the Board of Finance again, unfortunately with the same topic, Marine Patrol. I echo the chairman's comments that we are not before you tonight for a decision this evening. We want to have a discussion with you about both a short-term solution to an immediate need and obviously a long-term solution to a need. Boating season is clearly upon us, and I firmly believe as your police chief that the Marine community deserves policing. And the way that they get policed is that I am able to put the fine men and women that work for me on a vessel to patrol both the river and Long Island Sound to respond to law enforcement incidents. Each member of the Board of Finance has been provided with a document that we call the Marine Strategic Planning Committee Vessel Status Report. In the document that you are about to be walked through is a copy of the Marine Survey that some of you suggested that we got. 2 different quotes to make repairs in order to make the vessel safe to go in the water. Both of those repairs, sadly, will take a couple of months to complete, so that might miss our entire marine season. There are 3 different options for leasing a vessel just for this season, and Sergeant DePerry and Sergeant Walsh are here to also talk with you about 4 different purchase options that we might want to talk about, different style boats than the one that was presented to the town through the Port Security Grant. So again, our intent tonight is to present some information, answer questions as best we can, have you go home, digest that information, and then hopefully come back and work with us on a short-term solution and then a long-term plan. I need to tell you that every day we delay a decision is another day that we don't have the tool that we need to properly police the Marine community. So I'm hopeful that in short time, the Board of Finance will have all the information that they need, the Board of Selectmen will have all the information that they need, and we can come together as a community to make sure that we have a proper asset that is safe for our personnel and operationally sound for our mission so that we can deliver the much-needed services to the Marine community. So with that, I will introduce Sergeant DePerry and Sergeant Walsh, who will walk you through the documents and those various segments that I discussed.
Thanks, Chief. Sergeant DePerry, so there was a couple questions on the floor earlier that I'd be happy to answer pretty much right up front. Hours on the vessel each year, about 350 hours, well documented within our Marine Patrol budget. 350 hours is our average hours on the vessel each year. As far as the timeline, something that has been reiterated pretty much over and over, but there was a question about why the survey this late in the game. Approximately 5 years ago, we requested from the Board of Finance some capital money to go into a fund to replace the police vessel, because we knew at that time that it was aging, it was getting to the end of its life cycle. some controversy, some discussion over whether we were told or not told to go get a grant. We applied for a grant at that time. We got denied in the first year. Second year we applied was 2014. It's a pretty extensive process. In about August 2014, late August, we got notified unofficially that we were one of the finalists for the grant. September, early October, we were officially notified. We passed that on, kind of celebrated it, passed it on. We ended up getting money from a federal grant. Fast forward that a little bit, it went to town referendum and it failed. So at the end of last season, we did not get a survey under the auspice that we had received this grant, and we were hoping that we would have a vessel purchased and in the water sometime in June of this year under the port security grant. Did not happen. So a couple months ago at a Board of Finance meeting, we were told to get a survey, or it was requested that we get a marine survey. We knew the boat was in dire straits, so to speak, at the end of its service life, but we didn't really understand exactly where that was. And if, you know, we got the marine survey and we had some conversations along the track with the surveyor, and he told us blatantly, look, I'm going to write you this survey, but you're not going to be able to go on the water with this boat because it's unsafe. There were some negotiations. We didn't want to hear that because we want to be on the water. We want to be servicing the community, but he has liability on his end also. And backtrack a little bit. The way that I got to the marine surveyor is we wanted to have a corrosion survey done. Basically, we have an aluminum vessel. We wanted to make sure that the hull was structurally sound, first and foremost. So I called up the American Boat and Yacht Council. I asked who was certified in corrosion, who did public safety vessels, who did commercial vessels in our area. There weren't many people that were certified. The gentleman that I was referred to was out of Nahant, Mass, and his name's Rob Scanlon. He's got a website that I went to, mastermarinesurveyor.com. Anybody can go to it and look at the survey. I called him. I asked him what his experience was. I called a couple other surveyors that were a little bit more local, but we wanted to keep this as far away from home as possible, so to speak. So he said he'll come down, he'll stay on as a consultant, and that's how I got to this marine surveyor. He put together a survey, and it is included in this package, and we'll go over that right now. So the good thing about our boat is we have a pretty new engine. So the engine has good compression. It's in good shape. The second part of the engine in the boat is the outdrive. The outdrive, on the other hand, is an older outdrive. It's been refurbished. It's actually been replaced. It was taken off the boat at one point because we replaced the outdrive. It was repaired and then it was placed back on because the second outdrive had failed. So it's actually 2 outdrives ago that's currently on the boat right now. However, it is functional and it works. So that's pretty much the only good thing about our vessel. It's usually the other way around with a vessel. Vessels usually have bad motors, and the owners have to decide whether or not they're going to replace the motors if it's going to be cost effective to keep the boat. We're kind of the other way around. This marine surveyor, you see on the first couple of pages, talks about the condition, overall condition of the vessel, all of the components of the vessel, which for the most part are in pretty good shape. And then he gets into his photographs and he shows the deficiencies involved in the vessel. So some of those deficiencies, and he spells those out in the end, are the tower. So we have a tower on our boat. It holds our light bar, it holds our radar unit, it holds our radios up top. And basically what's happening with the tower is the bolts in the floor, the gas tank is below the console. The bolts on the floor are pretty much stripped out. We've put bigger ones in over the years. We put backers on it, but it's acting like a crowbar. So basically, when you move our tower, it shakes back and forth, and the deck on the vessel flexes a little bit. So what that's causing is each weld around the tower to start cracking. He's documented that with photographs. It's been getting worse over the past 5 or 6 years. We have done some temporary fixes over the past 5 or 6 years. We've welded crossbars in, spent some of the maintenance budget. We've welded crossbars in. We have we put brackets coming down to the gunnels of the boat to try to give it more stability. We're at the end of that cycle. So every weld on the console is pretty much cracked. The console itself has 2 major cracks, structural cracks, that have been there for a couple of years, but the structural integrity of that damage has progressed. We've put plates in it, we've tried to fix it, but that crowbar effect, which he talks about in his survey, has served to further undermine the structure. So once you get back past the photographs, he basically told us verbally that we couldn't put the boat in the water. We said, we really need that in writing, because if you don't tell us what to fix, we're not sure what we're gonna have to fix. So he came up with this color code, red, yellow, and green, which you see on page 8 of his survey. And he recommended and advised us that we should correct these items in red before we put the vessel back into service. The first one is the significant corrosion detected in the transom, port starboard hull plating above the waterline as depicted in some of the attached photographs. What that is around where the outdrive is, when we first put the boat together, we used the 2-part aluminum aircraft grade epoxy. That epoxy is 20 years old. It's starting to break down, starting to get water underneath. And you can see where it's happening because the paint in that area is starting to come off and it's becoming bare. It houses a cowling for the outdrive. When he did his corrosion tests, he said there was some compromise in that area, and he recommends that we take the cowling off in order to really determine what the extent of that damage is. Well, the cowling's been on there since 1997. So when we remove that, and it's in the repair estimate, we're not sure what we're gonna find in the transom area. The transom, as was discussed by the owners of the boat, CR, is where the thrust comes in from the engines. So that's the most, it's the biggest part of the structure that takes the thrust of the vessel when you take off or slow down. So it's right at the transom area where this epoxy was placed. It's lasted for 20 years. I think we've gotten a good life out of that area, but once we take that cowling off, it's not gonna be good. And I said, well, what's gonna happen if that fails? He said, the boat's gonna sink. He said, it's really simple. He said, that's why I put it on number 1. He said, your boat's gonna sink, you thrust it, and that epoxy fails, and the boat's gonna sink. So we certainly don't wanna be on the boat when that happens. And that's what he talks about in the second red area also. The third area, several areas of the broken, cracked welding console, welded frame, base of the console. We talked about that. That's the tower which houses our radar, our radios, and our light bar. Again, he hits on it again with what's happening and why that's being caused. He's the expert. He came up with the crowbar. That's where I learned that, why this is getting worse and it's not getting better. And he said it's actually compromising the floor of your deck. And he recommended that the deck be taken out and a new plate be welded inside of the deck before we replace the tower. I don't know if that's in the quotes, but again, once you get into repairing a vessel, you have to take all this into account, and you're not really sure what you're getting into until you get down and actually see what's under there. The propeller needs to be reconditioned. That's minor, something that's pretty easy. Stainless steel and hydraulic lines for the outdrive, tilt and trim will need to be replaced. If we take the cowling off the motor, we're going to need to replace those anyway. So that's kind of written in there. On page 9, The last thing is replace the blower, bilge vent hoses, all are deteriorated and crushed. Easy fix, but those are important because it gets the fumes out of the engine compartment when you start the engine. So again, easy fix, not a large dollar item. If you go into the second red tab, it's the safety hazard repair quote from our service provider, Oakleaf Marina. So Mr. Massey, I believe, is here. Mr. Massey, if you'd like to speak on the repair. It's up to you if you'd like to.
You want to keep going, or?
Sure, yeah, sure. So basically, the bottom line is, in order to replace the tower, which all the welds are cracked, in order to rewire it and replace our radios, and we're not talking about any other items that we might get into, take the cowling off the outdrive, repair what needs to be repaired, replace that. The service quote is $52,342.17. The issue with service at this time of year is we usually get put on the priority list with Oakleaf Marina, but it is definitely a busy season right now, and this is not going to happen fast. This is a large-scale repair, and it costs $52,000. It's not something that we come and say without a heavy heart, because we didn't think it was going to be nearly that cost when we got into this. Again, the boat is at the end of its life cycle, and we were aware that it was going to cost some money if we were going to have to refurbish this boat. I reached out to the manufacturer of the boat, Sea-Ark. They came down last week, and they took a look at it, and they had an engineer come down with a salesperson, and he went through the boat from one end to the other. He basically did another survey, and he said, you can't operate this boat. He said, we can send it down to the factory and refurbish it. He said, I'll send you back a quote. He said, but until you do that, it's not a safe vessel to go on. He talked about the thrust and where the integral parts of the hull were, and he advised against it. So his repair quote for the Willard Marine, who has the plans and builds Sea-Arks, is next in the book. To refurb the boat completely, to put it back into service, and not have to do anything to it after that, is $79,800. So that's a complete rehab of the boat, the 23-foot Sea-Ark that we currently have. So I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Walsh. Once I got those quotes and I presented them to the chief, he said, well, what are we going to do? I said, I'm not sure. He said, what about going to like a rental company to rent a boat? And I said, why don't you talk to Ryan Walsh about that? Because, Scott, would you like to talk about the boat? Sure.
Yeah, in terms of cost of repair, it's important to understand, whether it be to the board or to the audience, some of the history here. The items that are delineated in the estimate are essentially the preamble or what initialized the request 5 years ago to replace the boat. That the boat had reached 5 years ago, had begun to reach the end of its service life, and that these issues were going to require significant repair. Hence the request for the appropriations to replace it. To the best of my knowledge, Saybrook has never purchased a Marine Patrol vessel. The Marine Patrol, which when it began in the 70s, was operating on a small center console aquasport. It then went to a donated DEP boat. Once that boat exhausted its life, there was the opportunity to get this boat, which began life as a U.S. Coast Guard boat. And when it was received by the town, it was stripped. There wasn't any hardware, any items on this at all. And we made the boat work based on the limited resources that the town has provided over the last 20 years. So Saybrook has never really made a significant investment in the Marine Patrol. And 5 years ago, we started to tell the town we were out of management to make this boat service the community. That's to some degree why the repair numbers are the way they are. because we've reached the edge of the service.
And I did have one more task before I tried to pawn it off on Ryan. My task was, the chief said, find a boat out there from any other law enforcement agency that might have an extra boat. I reached out to DEP, I reached out to Coast Guard, I reached out to agencies that I knew were replacing their boats to try to get something in the works. However, there was nothing out there. DEP, I reached out to my contacts. I told the chief, you should probably call the colonel directly. Called the colonel directly. We were trying to look out there for a vessel that would be available to get us on patrol this year. And that's when the chief said go to Avis or Dollar Rental and try to get us a boat. So they just don't rent boats.
Any questions on survey, current status?
I just have one question, maybe Mr. Massey, maybe you can answer. What's the boat worth right now? The engine in it's 3 years old, I don't know how many hours.
So I can answer.
1,500 hours? 1,300 hours?
If you remember when to give you an analogy, when the fireboat was sold, what did it return, about $10,000? It's worth the value of the engine, the outdrive, and whatever obsolete electronics are on. You know, my guess to Sergeant DePerry was
6 to 8.
6 to 8, realistically, maybe 10. It certainly has value, but it has outlived its life as a Marine Patrol vessel.
So Sea Arc didn't come here for nothing. They're trying to sell us a boat. They're salesmen, and she said, I can give you a trade-in quote also, $10,000. That's what she gave for a trade-in quote on the current boat that we have.
Against what? Against what?
Whatever we wanted to purchase from that company.
So what is that? Do you have any idea what that?
We'll get to
Yeah, we have a couple of things. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
I just have a question. So hypothetically, if the grant had passed, we still would not have a boat for this boating season. So what would have we used?
We would have continued to run the old boat knowing what we were running on. Right now, we have a piece of paper that says you can't run it. We knew it was in bad shape before, but now it's just a matter of having that actually on paper and saying we really shouldn't be running this boat.
And I don't think we knew quite how bad it was until this guy really got into it. And the other part of the proponent of the grant is we thought it was going to move in August, September, October when this first got moved to the first selectman's office and Board of Finance. We were under the impression that we were going to be able to get the boat in the water by the end of June. So we were thinking that the season for this vessel would have been much shorter.
So Brett, we knew the boat was bad. We didn't know how bad until the survey was done. And now I have a document that says I'm liable if I put personnel on the boat.
All right, so phase 2 of this is, what do we do today to, have a functioning Marine Patrol this year? As Sergeant DePerry said, research Connecticut, scraped marinas, boat owners, boat yards. Example is Milford Police Department just took delivery of their port security grant boat. The town of Milford accepted that. So they have a 1990 police boat with 2,000 hours on the motors that is going up for auction. We went down and looked at that and just said, it's no better than what we have now, and these new motors, instantaneously. So we've truly exhausted every effort. We reached out to all the boat builders that we've been in contact with, during the bidding process. We did some simple internet researches. I know Mr. Thorpe during the grant process came up with a surplus Coast Guard boat that said that would be a great idea for 20 grand. Those boats are cannibalized. There's certainly boats out there, but you need a boat that's going to function. So we were able to come up with basically 3 boats that we found, or 3 offers that we found that we could actually have within a month or so in service here, which are lease options. The first one is KCLM. This is a company down in Florida. And basically this gentleman buys those Coast Guard surplus boats. which are totally cannibalized. He outfits them, puts motors on them, puts the new seats in them, and then leases them out to government agencies. He has quite a nice little enterprise going. He started out at $900 a day. We explained to him our situation. He came up with a boat for $325 per day. Obviously, the issue with leasing these boats is the motors. So these motors are basically brand new on these boats, even though they're old boats. The KCLM boat is a 25 safe boat, which is a former Coast Guard boat. Nothing that we spec'd here in town. It's not a boat that would really fit our need. It's a fully enclosed boat, doesn't have the walk-around console that we were looking for, but it would get us on the water right now. He wants a 180-day lease, a little longer than our season, and obviously a substantial fee of $58,000. So that is the first lease. The second lease was Silver Ships. They're a boat builder that we worked with quite a bit during the grant process. They have a brand new 21-foot center console boat that we actually demoed in the river last year, that they're willing to charter us again for 6 months at about a similar fee, at $7,000 a month. Obviously, it's a much smaller boat than we'd like to have. We test drove it just in the river. It was, slipping and sliding and, taking waves over the side of it. DEP was out there with us last year when we did that. But that is a boat that we could have here short term. And then the third one is a local company, Towboat US, one of the sea towboats. I'm sorry, one of the Towboat US, one of the towboats. That gentleman works with KCLM, which is the same company down in Florida. He has several boats in this area, and he's willing to work with us at probably the best out of the 3 proposals, on more of a month-to-month or just a 4-month lease at a much more discounted rate. It's a boat similar to the Sea Ark we're replacing in terms of being just a center console with soft sides and set up with emergency lights. We have to change out the light color. But that would be the third lease option that we have, which are immediate. There's really no rental options, as Chief said and Sergeant Perry said. So you don't have a lot of choice. When we were making our reach outs to the builders, we did stumble upon a couple demo boats, a couple boats that are nearly completed, so a more immediate option. I'm going to pass out that sheet now, which we'll call purchase options. And our thought here was, as an educational meeting, I know you guys have asked us in the past, what is a police boat going to cost us? How are we going to, what's the bottom line? The boats here on this sheet range from $155 for a used boat up to $300,000 for basically the boat that we spec'd out in the grant process, absent of all of the required equipment. So when it comes time to make a decision in terms of where's our budget, these are the type of boats we can look at. Somewhere around $200,000, we can get a brand new, fully outfitted 26-foot center console, within 9 to 10 months. We can buy that same used boat for $155, have it in a month, but have to replace the outboards in 2 to 3 years because those outboards have 700 hours on them. So those are kind of our different options. There's a metal shark boat out down in Louisiana, which is a demo boat, has just 50 hours on it. So they're giving us a substantial discount on that boat if you wanted to make a purchase option. Question?
Any questions?
I guess I'm curious. We can look up on Craigslist, eBay, or Google our own and see center console boats, $50,000, $60,000. And then if you were to say that someone's going to come back and say, well, it doesn't support our mission. Well, what is the mission and what are the specifics of the boat for Old Saybrook? I think that our voters spoke back in whatever the vote was, saying, we don't need a state-of-the-art boat with every bell and whistle possible. And we've gotten along just fine with a center console boat that's, not going to break an arm and a leg. So, I even look at these and I'm like, $155,000 for a boat, when I can still go on, other search sites and see things for significantly cheaper, realizing though that we would have to put some technology in. So I guess I'm just kind of curious, where are we on this? Where's?
Sure,
what's
so
the-
obviously, not to cut you off. In fact,
No, no,
you know, we presented the port security grant vote. So we came in with a, you know, $365,000 package. That vote was designed to win the grant through FEMA, which we thought was our biggest challenge. Okay, we designed a state-of-the-art boat that was gonna meet every single need of that grant while do everything we need to do here in Old Saybrook, which is patrol, which is obviously our main function. The 4 men that were plucked out of the river on Saturday, there's a good chance that we were on patrol, we were the ones plucking them out. Does that become a search and rescue boat? No, it's a patrol boat that performs, you know, a vast number of functions. You never know when patrol is gonna turn into rescue, and you never know when patrol is gonna turn into enforcement. So we need a boat that's gonna put us out on the river in the safest platform, put us out in Long Island Sound in the safest platform, whenever that time is. We can do it in a variety of boats. We can give you a very cheap boat that we're gonna pour a lot of money into, and we're gonna come back in 2 or 3 years, gonna ask for another $50,000 or $60,000 to replace the used boat that we just bought. So all these boats that we're presenting, we feel are a good, sound fiscal project. They're aluminum, they're gonna last much longer. These are gonna be, even the cheapest used boat there is a good 10, 15-year boat, as long as we continue to maintain it as Oakleaf Marine has done for us for years, with motors and upgrades of equipment. So ideally, patrol is our main function, of being out there in patrol, but, you know, just like, you know, in a normal police car, you never know what your day's gonna turn into. So we don't just go out with an empty car. We have a car designed for the function that it serves. We have equipment in that car that is gonna allow us to go from patrol to, you know, kicking in somebody's door, you know, using a battering ram in somebody's door. The police boat is the same way. We have to be able to effect the rescue, so we have to have equipment on the boat to effect the rescue. We're the first ones there. We can't say, sorry, we don't have, you know, the equipment to do this. We have to have all that equipment on board. So we need a boat that's gonna carry that, and that's gonna support that.
What's the difference between the patrol boat and then being able to effect a rescue?
Just equipment, size, you know, stable platform.
So the Sea Arc that you see for 195 there, that's basically replacing, that's their current model of our boat that we have now.
The one that's.
The one in the top left.
Yeah, so the upper left, just to explain it, so the upper left, the boat pictured is a 2006 Sea Arc Commander. It was out of North Carolina. They used it 700 hours, and they have a fleet replacement program. So after 6 or 7 years, they replaced their fleet, and that includes their boat. It was bought surplus in 2014 by this yard in Florida. He's refurbished it, all new paint, new sponsons. You know, it's basically ready to go for, you know, 155. And that includes outfitting it with our radios, our systems, you know, once we get it up here from Florida. Below that, we reached out to Sea Arc, and they'll do that exact same boat, brand new, with new motors for 195. So just as an informational reference for you, in terms of what an adequate boat costs, or at that size, is, you know, 195, again, outfitted with our.
Is that before or after the $10,000 trade?
Before or after?
That's before, so we would deduct 10,000 from that.
We determined who owns the boat and what right we have to trade the boat.
We own the boat.
We have determined that, yes.
And who owns the boat?
We own the boat.
We own the boat, yes.
And when was that determination made?
During the grant process.
I thought that question was raised during the grant process or when the presentation was made to the Board of Finance, and it was uncertain at that time what could be done with the boat.
We asked the question after you asked the question, and we found out during that process that we own the boat.
So after that question came up, we researched and found out that we can do whatever we want with
So
it.
the boat would be ours to do.
Correct.
So we can trade it in and accept the funds for it. So basically, that upper left-hand corner is, the police car is done. We retire the police car, we have to buy a new police car. How much does the same type of vehicle in today's dollars cost? That's all that is. That's stripped asset replacement.
How much of the equipment on the existing boat can be reused?
That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question. Certainly like the department radio, the VHF, but, you know, as we showed you, the radar, the GPS is all, you know, outdated.
How
Defender's got a 21-foot inflatable with a 150 Yamaha on it, brand new. Hartford Police Department bought one last year with a trailer for under $50,000. Why wouldn't we look at something like that?
We don't cover the same area at all as Hartford. We don't have the same sea conditions, same.
Well, I'm told by the gentleman at Defender that the water is more treacherous in Hartford than it is in Old Saybrook. And the reason why is because of the debris in the river.
Sure. Debris is one thing, but, seas and currents.
They also make a 24-footer that, I mean, if it's good enough for the DEP, and it's good enough for Hartford, why isn't it good enough for Old Saybrook?
Again, DEP does cover this area. You'll see they were out the other day in their safe boat, which is a 27-foot fully enclosed cabin. Obviously, we work with them quite a bit. All those boats go to the rivers and the lakes in Connecticut, except for the one, Prudence, which is their educational boat. So any response boat that DEP has is not the 21-foot Zodiac out of this area.
So Brad, I've obviously learned a lot during this process. And probably one of the best quotes came the other day when we were talking to the Towboat US gentleman who has 3 different boats in his fleet, and we're talking to him about the lease option. He's talking here, talking there, and I'm a blunt guy, so I said, point to the boat that you're thinking about leasing us. And he looked at his vessels and he says, well, it can't be this one because it's just a river boat. You need that one or that one. And I said, hold on, explain that to me. He said, some boats are designed for the river, probably like the vessel that you're talking about that patrols the waterways on the Connecticut River in Hartford. Some boats are designed, obviously, for river work and sound work. When you look at the map of Old Saybrook, we're divided about 50-50. All of our beach areas and a majority of our beach communities are located on the Sound, which means if we need to enter the Sound on patrol to protect all the swim areas on all of our town beaches and all our private beaches, to patrol the marina located at Indiantown, we need a vessel that is capable not only of river work, but sound work. We've all been around a long time, and we've all presented different capital needs from different departments. I understand that buying a car is something that we're all very knowledgeable about, because it's something we've all done. So while we sit here during budget season and we talk about all the big numbers of our budget, but buying a car comes up, everyone gets pretty passionate because they have knowledge about it. Now we're talking about a police boat. A police vessel, primarily designed for patrol, is not a recreational boater's boat. If I own a boat, I get to make the decision whether I'm staying in the river or taking the turn and going out into the Sound. If I'm a public safety professional on a mission, I don't have that choice. I can't say I'm not going out in the fog, I'm not going out at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going on patrol. We don't do that. We don't say no. One of the hardest and most difficult decisions a public safety chief can make is the decision not to respond or not to provide service. Sadly, I had to make a decision this year based on this Marine survey not to provide service. We are here before you tonight to present information to help us with our immediate problem and then talk long term. And it's not a perfect situation. It's just not. If we decide to lease anything, even if, Fortuna Boats USA came in and said, I'll give you a boat for $5 a day, we're still wasting that $5. We're never going to get that back. We're renting something to use it now and it goes away. It's not a perfect situation, but we do have an immediate need. If we want to talk about bigger needs for the future, what the final boat will be for police patrol, I suggest that we expand our Marine Strategic Planning Committee. You have to understand that at some point you have to trust those who specialize in the industry. And they're not all the time salesmen, right? Sometimes salesmen will tell you that their product is best because they're trying to make the sale. I have marina owners, I have surveyors, I have people in the industry telling me what we need to satisfy our mission. And mission is not, do we stop a boat? Do we save someone in the water? It's not the mission. The mission is, where are we patrolling? We must patrol the river. We must patrol the Sound. That is our jurisdiction in Old Saybrook. It's been that way before me. It'll be that way after me. It's just the jurisdiction that we have to patrol. So as we go forth and we talk about these boats, understand that we're not picking vessels to put in front of you that we personally like. This has nothing to do with our personal agendas. These are vessels that meet the needs of the department to provide service in the river and in the Sound.
Is our jurisdiction any different than Old Line?
Well, they do the river and they take the turn left and go out into the Sound.
Similar?
So it is similar. And what kind of boat do they have?
Don't know, I don't work in Old Line, correct? I work in Old Saybrook, and that's the topic on, the table.
Brian can tell you. They have a,
May I?
Yes.
Their boat is an accident waiting to happen. Okay? Just tell you that right now.
I'm just asking what their boat is. I'm not asking
It's
what
a 24-foot private pier with a single engine on it that was exact same boat with a single engine on it that the fireboat was when it sank.
It did
so
say.
it's a fiberglass.
This was tied up.
Yeah.
Enclosed cabin.
They don't have any.
24 meters long.
Because we're in this situation, let me ask you, how hard did you push DEP? They have to patrol that river. When I went to talk to them, they tell me they can't get out there because they haven't got enough personnel, but they got plenty of boats.
Correct.
How come you guys can't work a deal with them for this summer? I mean, if we talk about an emergency situation, that's the one you go after.
So, Barry, I spoke to the colonel of the DEEP, who said there were no extra marine assets available to give to the town of Old Saybrook. I don't know what else to do. I called the gentleman. I told him our need. I think pretty much everyone in the marine community is aware of our current need. I asked the question. I thought he was going to say, I'll open the hangar, come over and pick out which one you want. He did not say that. He told me that there were no state assets available, as did the state police. We tried. We literally, it got to the point where it was embarrassing how many different law enforcement agencies we were calling at the various levels of government, asking if there was an extra boat that we could use for the summer. We did our due diligence.
Why can't you use a Zodiac like this on the river for the same price as renting a boat? And then if you had an emergency, you use the fireboat, because that's what it's supposed to be anyway.
So Brad, we need to patrol both the river and the Sound. You cannot safely do that in a small Zodiac with a little engine that you hold on
It's
to.
not that kind of boat. Here's a picture of it right here.
So again,
Too small.
I believe that's too small of a vessel because those in the industry are telling us what we need to be safe for our mission, which is patrol.
Then why does the DEP have one in the water across the river?
Because perhaps maybe they use that as a flood boat, which the colonel told me they have many flood boats, but they're not designed for patrol work. Or maybe they use that specifically for river work up the rivers. I don't know.
Because they have 60 other boats to choose from, so they have to go on another mission.
We have to stop public comment.
Right,
Either
we
for
said
everyone or
that
no
you couldn't
one.
comment until later, so.
We'll have public comment.
No, but if all these
just
people
blurted
can
out.
stand up and talk,
No
this
one's
is not
standing up and
fair.
talking
That gentleman right there from Cito stood up and talked.
Because a question was asked. All right, so I
And he
will
can be
ask a
addressed by these
question.
gentlemen.
I'll ask a question of the public right now. I will ask past Chief Dunn to explain the delineation between the fireboat, because this was asked earlier, and the police boat, if you would.
Well, the fireboat was designed to last 30 years with motor replacements every 10. We have it in our apparatus fund to replace motors every 10 if it's used as a fireboat. The fireboat is long. I believe it's from the, I'm not a boat guy.
34.
From the front to the back, or whatever you call it in boat world. It's 35 feet. It's got two hulls. It's a catamaran-sized boat, style boat. I believe it's almost 14 feet wide. And that's because when the fire department goes out, usually it's very rarely a sunny, beautiful day that something goes wrong, unless two boats collide. It's usually in the worst weather possible, and we're out in the Sound in big bad waves. Dave, you've probably been there a million times, but a catamaran hull in difficult weather tends to be a more stable platform. So if you're in a single hull boat and you're trying to set up the pump, or you're working a hose, or you're pulling people over the side of a boat, I'm not a small guy. I know if I stand on the side of a boat that's a single hull boat, I tend to make that boat go a little more to one side than the other. If I do it on our fireboat with a catamaran hull, I don't make the boat pitch and because it's a stable platform. The fireboat also has the side doors where, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to pull someone, maybe on the side of a pool, you've tried to pull someone out of the side of a pool, or you try to pull someone up on a boat. It's very difficult. We have a Zodiac boat that we use for close inland stuff, or when we're in the little rivers and streams. If you try to pull someone up over a Zodiac boat side, it's pretty difficult. So we have the doors on the fireboat that we can open virtually at the water's edge, and you can pull the person up and in over. We even have like there's a name for it, but like a little crank thing that we can go off to the side and put them in a, it's a what?
Jib crane.
Jib crane, we can put them in a Stokes basket that floats a patient. We can lay them out in a stretcher in the water. We can lift them up with the crane and wheel them right through that door, into the boat. Now, the inside of the boat is set up as you can picture like an ambulance. It's got a long bench seat. We have a defibrillator, we have suction, we have all the basic medical equipment that an EMT would need to perform CPR or other type stuff on a patient who's laying actually on either a straight, full, long backboard or the Stokes basket. So if a person's unconscious, for instance, in inclement weather or out in rolling seas, we can fully perform CPR, do ventilations, compressions, and have a defibrillator right inside the boat. It's a closed cabin, so we can close the door and transport that patient to the dock. Many times, the police department, because they're on patrol, might get out there and pick up somebody who's injured. They've done it before, or will go out and pick up people. We're your patient transport boat, so to speak. They're your, get there and stabilize the scene or pull someone out of the water kind of boat. We transfer often injured parties or rescued parties onto our boat. We have extra life jackets for people we pick up of all various sizes. Plus, let's not forget that our boat is made to pump water. So we can pump. We have a big fire pump on it, same like on a fire truck. Plus, we have a V8 vehicle motor in one of those catamaran hulls. It's a heavy boat. It's, if I remember statistically, it was over a third heavier than what that new police boat they were looking at is. So we go through a lot of fuel when we're on the water. But that boat pumps over 1,000 gallons a minute in water. We also have hose on that boat. We have 1,200 feet of hose on the fire engines, but in that boat, we have a couple hundred feet of that big yellow hose because we can actually supply land-based fire trucks from that pump. If you remember the Essex Maritime Museum caught fire a couple years ago, they had a water issue down there. They couldn't get water to the trucks. I don't know if it was a hydrant issue or what the issue was, but our fireboat tied up at the dock and fed the fire trucks and fed the hose lines of the firefighters in the building while they were putting the fire out. So the boat is designed to be a fireboat. It's built as a fireboat. It's significantly bigger than these patrol boat type things. And it's a boat that if you picked up 8 people off of another boat, you could put them on there. If you had several injured people that you needed to lay flat due to whatever kind of injury they have, we have a large flat deck, we can do that. It's made to be a fireboat, and that's what it is. Let me just mention one other thing. It's red. It says fire department on it. I keep hearing all these things, why don't you just share a boat, share a boat? Well, it is just like when the police department breaks down a car and it goes to the Ford garage for a new muffler, let's just go grab one of the engines out of the firehouse. It's that ridiculous to think that that's possible. It's just saying, just because it floats, we can use it for whatever purpose it is. You wouldn't use it as a sewer pump out boat just because it floats. I mean, it's a fireboat, that's what it is. If you were pulled over on Main Street in a fire truck with red paint on it, how's that with a policeman driving? What's going to happen later when it's just a firefighter on that fire truck and they're driving down the road and the lights are on, they're going to a fire call? Is the public going to wonder whether it's a fire truck today or it's a police car today? It's a dangerous situation you're putting those firefighters in. Yeah. So I'd say the fireboats are completely different. Let me just say, when the boat was purchased, it was $418,000, and that was $2009, and it's rated to last 30 years. And that's if it maintains the job it has now.
And just to add to a little bit of that, everything JT said is absolutely true. Picture Saturday's rescue. So police and firemen go on the fireboat to the scene. The town of Old Saybrook then owns that scene. We can't take the injured people back to the dock because the policemen have to protect that scene, where if another boat came along, became part of that crash, the liability's on the town of Old Saybrook. So if we're going to do this correctly, we're going to have a police boat and we're going to have a fire. So that's how we properly handle marinas.
Any questions for?
I have a question for Carl. I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of people telling me that this town does not need a boat at all. My question to you is, what mandate or liability would the town have if they did not have any boat? And you may have to talk to the town attorney, but I think we have to get that issue cleared up in some townspeople's minds.
Yeah, I don't want to be presumptuous in answering that, John, but, you know, if we never patrolled the river, we'd have no liability in theory. I suppose one could argue that we've done it and the shore has been built up where marinas have engaged in certain business as a result of the fact that we do have marine patrol. I don't know that we would have any liability if we didn't patrol. But I don't know that liability is what I'm hearing over here. I think I'm hearing there are a lot of accidents out there, and there's wake issues, and there are boating under the influence issues. And I think the reason for the patrol is perhaps the reason why police exist, and that's deterrence from the get-go. But I think not having a boat doesn't, my opinion, doesn't create liability. The question is it a good situation? I think that's more the issue.
Any other questions?
I guess one comment on this is, in my opinion, I do agree that we do need a boat, but I going back to this police boat, fire boat, I feel like we're just slingshotting here, just to say, okay, we need a boat just for the summer, so what can we do, what can we get? And, you know, I think we've all agreed the lease options is just ripping up and tearing money. But, you know, just to look at this and say, okay, these are our only options, let's choose this because this is the only option, is also somewhat irresponsible. So I go back to the idea of, we're a town, we work together. We have mutual aid with other towns. So why can't we, for a summer, come together and say, we have a fireboat. No one's gonna complain if they're trying to be rescued, that a fireboat is going out to rescue them. I believe the fire department just said they have a Zodiac boat. You know, we could use that. And I'm trying to come up with something where we can say we have some Marine Patrol presence, but not at an irresponsible financial way, just to say, here's our new boat, to say we have patrol and this is our mission. Because I think that is not responsible to our taxpayers.
Sergeant DePerry.
Yes, sir.
On the purchase options on these particular boats,
Yes.
does the dollar amount include any unmentioned items such as in the first grant, training of somewhat 35 officers, sending people to where the boat's being manufactured, 2 occasions overnight if possible? Are there any other items in here that aren't mentioned, including in the price that we should be aware of?
No, sir, we actually took those out of the original proposal, so the way we got to that number was basic boat and electronics, no training. It'd be in-house training, and we took all the FEMA required equipment, which allots to about $55,000 out of that, and that's the 28-foot, the boat number 4 there, bottom right. That was basically the boat that we spec'd for the port security grant, minus all of the FEMA required equipment and training.
So the numbers I see, 155, 305, 295, and 305.
Correct.
Those are for the boats pictured as we see them, with some electronics on the top.
With electronics, that, correct, yes.
The used boat there's money allocated for a survey in that 155. So we wouldn't want to do that without obviously having.
The other question I had is on this strategic vessel status report. On the is the marine surveyor here tonight?
He's not.
I see on page 10 that it mentions is a law enforcement vessel on patrol round the clock, 7 days a week throughout the year. This considerable cost to repair to many issues and not cost effective. That seems to be a misprint somewhere, because somewhere else in this thing, it doesn't say that exactly. So I don't believe the boat is on patrol 24 hours a day, 12 months a year either.
No, it is not.
Elaborate on that?
What says ready? Right? Are you reading in the remarks section, Mr. Stevenson?
Remarks section, yep.
Are you reading the second line where it says the vessel needs to be at the ready, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
You're reading the wrong line.
Which
It's
line?
the section that you're reading.
It says law enforcement vessel on patrol around the clock, 7
Yeah,
days a week, 7 days per week throughout the year.
We didn't write this, obviously, that's the surveyor writing that, and that's not the situation.
So the correct word is under remarks where it says the vessel needs to be at the ready.
But in the section that Mr. Massey quotes, I think it's a different wording, so that's why I wanted to bring that out for you, everybody to be aware of that, because there's a different wording in that section. So in fact, the marine vessel is not on patrol around the clock 7 days a week per year throughout the year, is that correct?
Obviously not, no. Based on our budget, clearly not.
Right.
Right, yes. At the ready.
So that wording in his remarks, would that affect his recommendations at all on any of the
He's
items he
agreed,
found?
he's agreed to stay on as a consultant. I could certainly contact him and let him ask him that question, but I don't believe so. I mean,
I think it's just a technical error, but I wanted to make sure that you fellows were aware that there's two conflicting statements in the book here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one other question, just remind me, when I'm not familiar with this. You got engine hours at the helm here, and computer scan tool hour readings. What's the difference? You say 350 a year, so you got 1,914 hours on it.
So the total hours on the motor, if I'm, without reading it,
Is
is
that-
1,900, we average 350 a year, 400 a year.
Okay, but then you got 1,914 for the engine hours at the helm.
that is a
Those are the same
rebuilt.
thing or no?
Well, that's a rebuilt engine, so
But you've only had them since 2012.
Right.
So it would be 900, if you use your number, 350, it'd be like 1,000.
no, I believe those include the total hours on the engine itself. So it was rebuilt in 2012. We bought a rebuilt motor.
And I think those engine hours kind of show you our function out there. If you look at the total hours at idle or at 1,500 RPMs, it's 80% of the hours on the motor. It's really a patrol.
How many days does the boat patrol in the summer?
So ideally,
Just patrol,
it's the Friday night, Saturday, Sunday for the 21 weekends.
so for 3
And
months.
in holidays, yes.
And then the holidays, right?
So 50.
Yeah, it's the total hours.
When the sun,
It's from early May until October, Friday, Saturday, Sundays,
and the boats in the water to respond to emergencies?
24 hours a day, during that time.
Okay.
So we generally put the boat in May, early May, correct? Early May, and we take it out right around November 1st. Depending on, obviously, depending on the weather.
And on average, how many rescues per year?
It depends, it really depends.
Could you provide us statistics in the last 3 years on the use of the boat, as far as rescues, et cetera?
I can, but again, we're not here to specifically talk about the rescue mission. Our primary mission is patrol. So the patrol records are based on our budget that is approved, which is based on hours, which, as the two sergeants have clearly identified, as Friday evenings, Saturday, Sundays, holidays. There are also additional times that we'll put a boat out sporadically during the week if we are getting complaints from marinas that they're seeing certain types of traffic happen at a certain type of time or day that's causing damage to the vessels that they have in dock. So we try to police what comes at us like we do on the road, but that is the general schedule. So I really want us to focus on our mission of patrol, as Sergeant Walsh explained very well, actually. You never know what patrol turns into. That's where our rescues happen. The boat has to be at the ready for law enforcement incidents. So the reason why everyone gets trained in the boat, and no matter what we choose, whether we lease, buy, whatever, everyone will get trained in the boat, is because I need to have a police officer who's on duty working the area where the boat is to respond to the boat, to board the vessel, meet a handler, and go out and handle a law enforcement incident that's occurring during not a normal patrol time. So everyone has to have the safety orientation and know how to be safe and work off the boat. Not everyone's trained to operate the boat, but everyone has to be safe on the vessel.
Do you keep track of all the incidences where you've been either called in or had to ticket or?
Yes, but as the first selectman eloquently put, part of our job is deterrence. We call it omnipresence. So our patrol hours are really what you should be thinking about when you think about what the vessel is used for. So if we give one ticket in a weekend, it doesn't mean we didn't deter, honk our horn, tell people to slow down, do some sort of mission that enhances the safety on the water. So if we're looking for hard numbers, the best numbers that this board can use to determine the need for the vessel is the patrol hours, which has been supported year after year after year in our municipal budget.
It would just be nice to see.
Sure.
So Greenwich has a fireboat combination police boat, and they're a fairly wealthy town. How can they do it and we can't?
Is Greenwich a paid fire department?
They are, yes. And I can answer that. The Greenwich boat was purchased off of a fire department FEMA grant. The police department took it over. It's not a fire boat, it's a police boat.
And they pay their staff, the firefighters on there.
They don't have firefighters on the boat.
Well, when it was, does that, maybe that's why they
Yes.
don't own it
Yeah,
anymore.
big controversy about it.
There was a big controversy.
So there's a police department now running a fireboat, is that what you're saying?
The police department runs that boat. It does not have fire, they've removed fire equipment off of the boat. Yes.
Right. The other concern I have is, no matter what boat ends up here, the people have said, by a 2-to-1 vote, that they voted down the boat. And I'm not quite convinced, no matter what boat gets chosen, if a boat gets chosen, that it will pass. And I really question, I think there needs to be some kind of compromise here. And I think that, you know, if the people knew that we had to spend 48 or 56,000 or 30,000 to lease a boat for a short period of time, that getting something like the Zodiac would be the answer. And yet we work to coincide with the police boat we currently have. That might get approved, but I don't foresee this town approving a vote after last time's vote, no matter what it is, especially if it's 150 or 200,000. And I think we ought to consider doing a combined program with Old Lyme, since we share the same water. And perhaps we could share it manpower-wise and boat-wise. I understand that they just got a boat from, I believe it was East Haddam, given to them, and that presently I'm told they have 2 boats. So I don't understand why we can't work together as a community, since we have a lot of good items. We have a great fireboat. Why can't these other communities help us out to get us through this period of time so that we can make the right decision? I think we're under too much pressure. And I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to work together, whether it's Essex or Old Lyme.
Any other questions?
Questions and comments?
What's the cruising RPM on that boat? I hear the scan of an engine, and it seems to me that the 0 to 1499, that scan shows the engine was at 88% of the usage was in those RPMs.
Correct.
The boat you have now has 1 engine, right?
Correct.
All the boats you're looking at have 2?
The outboards have 2.
And how big are they?
Depending on the model, they range from 250 to 300 horsepower.
And what's the horsepower on your current boat?
It's a 350 inboard outboard, so it's a different setup. It's actually a car engine as opposed to an outboard engine. So it's a different schematic, different setup. There's different outputs.
So why do you need two bigger engines?
Just the design of the outboard doesn't have the power of the inboard, and the dual motors gives you the ability, if one dies, to have the redundancy.
And maneuverability.
Yeah.
And maneuverability.
And you have maneuverability issues with the current boat you have now was in working order, let's say? Did you have issues with that boat?
They drive differently, so I mean, a dual outboard, you can rotate the two motors versus just having to.
So you can adjust to the capabilities of any boat then, as the driver?
Correct.
Okay. So you really can accommodate a one-engine boat? Because what you said at the presentation a couple months ago was that you replace an engine every 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 times during a 20-year cycle. A 300 horsepower engine is anywhere from 25 to 30,000. That's another between 105 and 150,000 for the cost of a boat, just on the engine.
Correct.
So I mean, why, to me, I think that in itself is too much money. I would be looking at a single engine boat. And you only use over 1,500 RPM. You use 7% up to 3,000 RPM, and then 4.5% over 3,000 RPM, which means there's not a lot of chasing or running around.
Patrol. Yes, patrol.
Most of it is cruising. So to me, I don't think you need 2 300 horsepower engines at all, based on your own numbers.
Great. So a couple comments and then a couple of questions. So I actually do support having a patrol boat. We are a coastal community. Me, the person living on the water, you guys have actually helped me out several times. So thank you for that. Question though, right? So, and I do agree we're not going to put you out there in a 21-foot fiberglass boat if you're going to go out in the sound with the kind of weather. But I do understand the 28-foot Dauntless on the bottom, that was for a larger scope. That was when you were with FEMA?
Correct.
Right, and then obviously the upper left is the 26-foot CR. And I think the question was asked, what would you guys define as the minimum boat? Now, the chief said obviously you did due diligence. Is it a 26-foot CR, or what is the minimum requirements that meet your needs? Have you defined that?
It is. So we did talk about that, and I think when we looked at the towboats, Towboat US had 3 boats, and they had 3 similar boats that you see up in the top left. Their river boat is what the owner of the company spoke to.
Yeah.
Is a 23-foot center console, the same exact boat. He said, that's our river boat. This goes north of Old Saybrook to Portland. He said, we don't use this in the sound. It's not a stable enough platform for my guys. I'm not liability-wise putting them in the sound in that 23-foot boat. And I think the chief kind of had an epiphany, because he's not a boater, and he said, well, why is that? You know, what is the reason for that? He said, well, you look how it sits in the water, you look at the sides, you look at where this boat is going to take a sea, and if it's going to be a wet boat in the sound, you don't want to put your guys in that. We have a 23-foot boat. We've operated on it for 20 years. Every operator and handler on that boat has been injured due to a wave on that boat. Fact. We want to put our guys on a safe boat. 26, that boat that you see in the top left, that's kind of where we're coming to the minimum size and saying we could get away with our mission, so to speak, with that boat right there.
And from the picture, does it have twin outboards? Or
It does. It has twin Suzuki 225s.
And I think you also have to look at what boats are out there in a law enforcement platform. There's not a lot to choose from. You know, so there's, you know, especially in what we were trying to do today was what's out there right now. You know, if we have a number to work with, then it's a different search. You know, but here was, here's what's out there. But I think the size, as Sergeant Perry said, is key to that.
So besides the 26-foot minimum, what else would be considered a law enforcement platform for you?
So we focus on the aluminum for the durability. And obviously then there's just a lot of it is the accessories with the electronics and basically the design.
And one of the other limiting factors with our current vessel is It does not have soft sides. It has D, 3-inch rubber D rails, and when we stop a boat on patrol, it's difficult. We have to throw out basically fenders with the rub rail. You don't have to worry about that. So we want a collar on the boat.
Questions? Any other questions? Thank you. All right, thanks very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just summarize the presentation, if you don't mind?
You can.
So, again, I appreciate your time and effort on this issue. I just want to point something out. This document or these options is not irresponsible. This is what's available right now. We are not working full-time on this. We have other things that we have to do. We feel we have an immediate need to police the marine community. We're doing the best we can with the time that we have to commit to present you with information to make a decision. I would ask you to strongly consider getting us through this summer. There's 3 leasing options. 2 of them are crazy expensive. I don't think they fit our needs at all. 1 is not as expensive. I'm hoping that we can work with that person to maybe bring down that cost just a little bit so we can have a boat in the water and do our patrol duties for 3 months while we look at the bigger picture and sit down and have more detailed discussions. So when you look at the handout that we passed out, the 26-foot boat that we've just talked about, I said to them, take the boat that you spec for FEMA, take all the FEMA stuff off. Don't do the enclosed cabin. No bathroom, no air conditioner, no heater. Take the training out of the budget. We still have to do it. Take it out of the boat budget. Strip the boat down to our bare needs to do the job. The electronics that are current, 2015 electronics that are current today. Reuse all of our radios. No new radios. Reuse all of our stuff and come up with a price so we can say to the Board of Finance, if you said just replace what you got, make it a safe platform, what would it cost? That is the new 2015 26CR Commander at $195,000 minus the $10,000 trade-in, I guess, at $185,000. We don't expect you to say go buy the boat. But what we do expect for a long term is point us in a direction. So then we can gather the committee together, expand the committee, maybe put one of you on it, maybe put a member of the Board of Selectmen on it, maybe some members of the public on it. And let's sit down and dive into the basic needs boat and see what we can come up with. But please, while you deliberate on this, please be cognizant of our immediate need to police the marine community this summer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any public comment? Yes, sir, in the back. Yes, sir. Please stand up.
Me?
Ma'am,
Yeah,
sorry.
hi. If somebody, on a Tuesday afternoon, if somebody from the marina calls and says there's somebody buzzing around in a jet ski, what happens? Does the boat get sent out?
Well, not to be sarcastic, not now. So traditionally, if no one could see from the land, a police boat could be dispatched to that.
So
Correct.
somebody would call and say there's a jet ski bothering us and we would send a boat out?
Typically, that call has to do with bothering a swim area at a beach where parents are concerned about their children and jet skis coming around. Obviously, a police officer can go on land and stand on the beach and go, but that's not listened to as often as we would like.
Well, there are comments from marinas about marinas being with problems with boats.
Correct. Yesterday, there was an evading accident with a boat, and we were not able to deploy a vessel, which we normally would have, to find the boat that crashed into the dock and then fled the scene.
Not just a specific accident, but something like that. You know, just that somebody is doing something, so the boat doesn't get sent out for that.
It would, but it can't.
I don't mean right now, I mean, but it would, so if somebody called on a Tuesday afternoon, the boat would be sent out.
At the shift supervisor's discretion, correct.
Yes, sir.
From the marine community, the Marine Patrol budget is funded for this current year, is also funded for the 2015-16 season.
Yep.
Is it fair to say that the marine community is paying for services they're not receiving?
I would say.
So,
The entire town's
Boy, the entire town is.
Is it fair to say that if you don't have a boat, that you're paying for it anyway?
There are services that, the town is paying for services that we're not receiving.
And I don't own a boat, and I'm paying taxes to pay for the marine patrol.
Right, so if I could, I would like the public comment section to be comment rather than an exchange ping pong game.
You got it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, what I'm distressed by that, since this process has begun, members of the Board of Finance are still unclear as to what the mission of the Marine Patrol is. The line item in the budget says Marine Patrol, but yet they continue to focus on the issue of emergency response. You've heard the chief and the sergeants explain, this is a Marine Patrol vessel, and it is vital to the Marine community. What is going to start to happen is, without the presence of the Marine Patrol, which is no different than the squad car in your neighborhood, that Marine Patrol vessel provides a deterrent. It provides a deterrent against crime. It provides a deterrent against violations that the DEP and the Coast Guard cannot patrol against. For example, weight violations. That patrol has been present in Saybrook for more than 35 years. To a large extent, all of the slip owners and renters in Old Saybrook expect that service, and in some cases where they own slips are entitled to that service. If that service is not provided, over this weekend, we started to receive complaints about why there's not a Marine. We have no answer for that. There doesn't appear to be a direction for an answer. So in response to those complaints, we provided them with Selectman Fortuna's telephone number, and they've encouraged them to call and complain. If it's after hours, they'll call the dispatch center and complain. This is a much different discussion in May, June, and July than it is in February. The Marine community is an extensively large community in Old Saybrook that I would suggest not be ignored. There are 9 facilities in Old Saybrook. There are 10 Marine communities. I do not know of one other town in Connecticut that supports a Marine community of that base. So if it requires a more group effort, if we have to go to every single Marine household, every single slip owner and renter in Old Saybrook to ensure this gentleman's opinion that a boat isn't vital, that's an extensive community. And I would encourage you to put aside your petty differences, find a solution to support a community that, despite your intentions, is greater than 50% of the grand list.
Hi, I'm Donna DeBella. I live at 91 North Cold Road, and I own part of the marina. You house both, am I correct, both the fireboat and the police boat?
He
at
donates
your
the slip
marina?
to the fireboat.
You donate it?
We provide services to both departments, as we do.
So maybe, I'm just saying, that doesn't sound right that you're speaking, you know, on behalf.
He's
Yeah.
part of the public and he can have every right to
Okay.
speak.
But we provide emergency services to probably 20
Okay,
different departments.
that's fine. I had a couple of comments.
Sure.
I'm pleased that, and I'm hopeful you won't forget the February 24th vote. It was a 2-to-1 margin against a vote. I kind of resent, not kind of, that's a weak word. I resent the fact that I feel that the vote is being circumvented so that they get a vote another way and circumvent the vote that took place on that particular day. At an earlier Board of Finance meeting, some of the comments by the chief, if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it's done. If not, it's done. Let the people have a voice. And taking away the voices of the people, was another one. But of course, in the end, it did go to referendum. So in addition to all of that, let's not forget the hours that people are going to have to spend on the boat and the money that will, how much it will cost. In hours, there were 24 weekends, which is 6 months, I guess. 20 hours per weekend, and then 36 extra hours for holidays. I have roughly 516 hours is what we're talking. And is it $70 an hour? That's what I heard, per person. So we're talking like $36,000. Doesn't include the insurance on the boat, the maintenance on these boats, even if we lease the boats for the summer, the gasoline, and then the charge to drop off and pick up. They're all over. One is in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. $2 a mile they want to transport the boat. We're on the East Coast. It's a shame we can't find a boat somewhere between Maine and here. You know, that's not that far away. Why do we have to go to Florida? I recall the fireboat came from California. I was at that meeting too. And that's a long way to have a boat made in California and brought to Connecticut. So that's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief?
Thank you. I just want to remind the Board of Finance, which I'm sure you're well aware, and certainly those in attendance, that the referendum vote was not a referendum vote on whether or not to have a Marine Patrol. It was specific to an appropriation of a certain sum of money that was tied to a federal port security grant. The town did vote that down. We're not asking for that vessel. We're talking about our immediate needs to sustain the Marine Patrol program, which has a current budget this operating year and an approved budget for next fiscal year. So while a very smaller turnout for our budget referendum, disappointing, I guess you could say, the townspeople did approve a Marine Patrol budget for the 15-16 fiscal year. The only way to accomplish Marine Patrol is with a patrol vessel, which is why we're trying to give you some options to think about. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what's the status of that grant? Did you give it back?
No. So we'll maintain that grant until the end of its performance period.
Which is?
In case, is it June?
It's 2 years.
2 years. In case the Board of Finance, in our long-term planning says, can you go back to FEMA and scale down the boat? We haven't had that conversation. My needs today are immediate, which the port security grant does not help me with.
Yes, sir.
Everything that comes down here, let me step back. I think there's a need for a police presence on the water. Okay? But everything that comes down here from either side is what I call the boogeyman argument. The boogeyman on safety and liability. The boogeyman on what the people approved or didn't approve. Everybody is turning the argument to what they wanted to say, and no one is looking at the big issue. Or what happens if someone calls for a jet ski? What happens if someone calls for a jet ski in South Cove? I haven't seen the papers, but I dare say that boat cannot get into South Cove. So there you go. There's another argument that's presented. You know, there's a whole portion of the marine community that's not being served. South Cove, the Oyster River, that boat won't do it. Now, the problem that you have here is you've got to get your acts together. And your acts have to be to get a compromise. This town of 10,000 people, the big question is, can this town of 10,000 people afford $750,000? That's off the top of my head, quibble with it. Can a town of 10,000 people afford to invest $750,000 in 2 boats? And as the Board of Finance, you ought to know that answer better than someone else. You know, so what we got to get is have Kyle Fortuna call the DEP or the state police and say, get your asses out here and patrol because we can't do it this year. And what we've got to do is we've got to come up with a solution to the problem that we have. No stopgap methods, no Band-Aids. They don't have a boat, they're not going to have a boat. We'll get through the year. Let's get a solution to the problem. Let's decide not what kind of a boat they want or what kind of a boat I want. Let's decide what kind of boats the people of Old Saybrook can afford and move from there. Because We can't give them anything more or less than we can afford. And not one person in all of these arguments has stopped and said, what can people afford? Can people afford a $200,000 boat when a $47,000 boat may be available at Defender? Nobody has talked about that. What I want to know is what the people of Old Saybrook can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Carol?
Hi. Sergeant Perry and Sergeant Welch, I think you've done a great job tonight setting the tone, presenting the information. But to follow up on a couple of things, I believe that I read in the Patch, which I guess is a local paper for O-Line, that O-Line did receive a gift, complete free, from 2 different towns who cooperatively own the boat and don't need it anymore. And their first selectman, Bonnie, however you pronounce her last name, said in that article that we now have 2 police boats. And so I think that's maybe somebody on the Board of Finance, maybe Selectman Fortuna, needs to make a phone call and find out for mutual aid, as Brett said. You know, we do a lot of mutual aid, but I don't know that the other towns help us out to the extent that we help them. And so perhaps looking into the truth or the lack of truth on the boats in O-Line would produce a short-term solution. And maybe it has to be somebody, as I say, maybe First Selectman Fortuna has to do it. Same thing with the DEP. If they said no to one person, would they say no to the First Selectman? Maybe something could be worked out, again, with a very short-term lease, very inexpensive. We already, as taxpayers in Connecticut, own the boats. Perhaps they could sublease the boat to us for 3 months or 4 months or something, so we could have something out there to give us a police presence. As far as the long term, there needs to be, what is the mission? I've heard it asked twice, I've heard it kind of, my opinion, fumbled through. Mr. Stevenson mentioned what it says here on the last page of the report that talks about 24/7, 365, we need a boat. I don't think so, okay? So somewhere there's a communication gap there that people need to know, what do we need the boat for and how much can we afford? We're not unreasonable, I don't believe. But short term, here's a couple of possibilities. Long term, let's sit down and talk about it.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
If we don't use this Marine Patrol money, where does it go at the end of the year? Because the gentleman behind me was concerned that he's paying tax dollars that aren't getting used. So it doesn't seem like they're gonna get used if there's not a boat in the water.
Right. That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
Just a couple of points. One, most of this argument that's gone on forever is about we need a boat this size, that size, other size. What we really haven't defined is why we can't live with patrolling the river. Because, you know, we can protect the other areas. You're really only protecting swimmers, and you can protect swimmers with buoys and things on the edge of the thing. So if we can establish it as just only the river, then that's one point. The other point is nobody has said anything about getting control of the cost of this marine patrol by having one person on the boat, not 2. They don't need to be armed. You know, you're trying to catch people doing 6 miles an hour. If they're out there with the guns, if I were them, I'd leave. We don't need that sort of power or force or thing. We just need somebody, if we need somebody, to catch people going too fast in the river. That puts a different complexion on what's needed as a police boat. The DEP have single-man boats. They're not that big. I mean, I'm hearing that you really can't go out in the sound in a 24-foot boat. There's an awful lot of 24-foot boats that are based in Old Saybrook that are going out in the Sound in moderate weather. If it's immoderate weather, there's no patrolling requirement. You don't need to go out in the Sound to patrol in bad weather because nobody's speeding, etc., etc. And the police boat is not a rescue boat. The fire boat is a rescue boat. That's what we all determined years and years ago. I don't see why we should be changing it. So I'm very much inclined to agree that the suggestion about like the Defender type boat would be more than adequate for the job, but make sure it's only policed by one person. And the overtime that you need for that, take it out of the patrolling of the cars in Old Saybrook, because we've got too much patrolling in Old Saybrook. Everybody said it, and I think that's one of the reasons why you got such a skewed vote. We didn't vote on, we had a referendum that says we're not going to buy this boat. The reason why we had a referendum like that is because that was the only question that was put up for the referendum. If the referendum had said two questions like, do you want a boat or do you not want a boat, the result might have been quite different. My comment.
Thank you. Yes?
Yes, I have to agree with both Mr. Gadudi and Ms. Moran, but also to one of the Board of Finance members who suggested that there be, building on the mutual aid. I mean, there should be a meeting between the police departments of Old Line and Saybrook, along with the public officials, about this mutual aid in the time that we are, absent of police boat to patrol the river and presumably the Sound, that, Old Line can come to our assistance. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. I think that's an excellent idea. If we haven't had a vote right now, I think while we can think about this and ruminate about it, that seems to me to be a reasonable solution.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, did you have a comment?
Just sitting here, there are 9 major marinas in the town of Old Saybrook. There's about somewhere over 2,000 slips. I just feel very strongly that that is part of our policing base, the same as Otter Cove or Tucker Beach or wherever. We don't take certain areas of town and not patrol them because we don't have enough guys tonight. So to say that we aren't going to patrol the waters is taking a huge community, which, by the way, pumps millions and millions of dollars into the Old Saybrook economy every summer, and saying, if you're out there and you got a problem, swim. So that's my only comment.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Eleanor LaPlace. I've lived on the Connecticut River since 1972. And I can stand before you tonight and tell you that the river traffic has considerably lessened over the years, especially since the 2000. I also know that Island Cove Marina, Wheelers, and Ragged Rock are kind of protected against waves because they're on the shore. So it's basically oak leaves in between the bridges where you might have the waves. And I can tell you, when I first moved into my house, that the traffic on Memorial Day weekend in boats would be backed up from that railroad station all the way up to Essex. You don't see that today. That's my backyard. So that the river traffic has considerably decreased. On top of that, my taxes, because my backyard happens to be the Connecticut River, have gone up 400%. I can no longer stay there. And I really believe that the town of Old Saybrook, and by the way, that boat in Old Line was between Chester and Haddam. They got it for absolutely no money. It's only 22 feet, I think, I forgot the name of it, but it's a 1992 boat. That's how old that boat is, okay? I also believe, but when I went to look, I couldn't find it, I think Westbrook, Connecticut, does have a boat that they got from FEMA, not FEMA, from Homeland Security. Just before Memorial Day this week, there was WFSB did a thing on the DEP, and DEP said they do patrol. So that's on, that was just before this. I'm saying that there's no reason we can't work with O-Line, work with Westbrook, work with Essex, and there should be mutual aid. We're a small town, and I don't understand why the fire department and the police department can't share the boat. In New Haven, Connecticut, they have a fireboat that both the police department and the fire department share, and they operate it, and they certainly have a lot more issues to deal with than we do. Okay, so I really think that there should be some kind of a resolution here on this, and I really think the best way to do it is everybody share. There's only so many pieces in the pie, and you cannot. This budget in 2004 was $36,000. The Marine Patrol in 2004 was $36,000 something, and now it's $55,000. I don't get a 2% raise every year. Matter of fact, I had to go on Social Security to get my first raise. All right, that's all I have to say.
Other public comment?
I have one last comment. I think that this is a word of advice to all these people working on the Marine Patrol and trying to get the boat, the marina owners. If there's 2,000 slips in the town of Old Saybrook, where were those 2,000 voters when we voted? Is it because they're not taxpayers in this town and they're gonna reap the benefits of it? I mean, you should all reach out to those 2,000 people and ask them why they didn't vote, because you would have your vote. Everyone wants to blame everybody that voted against the vote, but nobody wants to ask where those people were that you thought you had the support of. And one other thing is, what does the state police boat do all day? Because I've been involved with incidents with the Old Saybrook Police Department where the state police have responded when they needed them. Does that boat sit at Oakleaf all day, or does that patrol the river? Does anybody know?
You talking about the big, what is it, 40-foot boat?
The state police boat that's
The
at
big
Oakleaf.
40.
Yeah, if push came to shove, would we
That's-
not call that out?
That's mostly used on Long Island Sound.
But if push came to shove, would we not call that boat out?
It's, I can answer that. It's stationed in New Haven Harbor. That's where its home port is. It's at Oakleaf only when it needs to be repaired. And Oakleaf repairs the state police vessel.
It's at Oakleaf an awful lot.
I agree.
And my father takes a 24-foot private pier that's in 1985 out to the Sound to fish commercially for the past 30 years. Yeah, and he does no maintenance on it. So I think boats can be fixed.
Comment on a single engine boat versus a twin engine boat. Not to, the town's never gotten a bill from CETO here, but there's been numerous occasions and we didn't know, it wasn't public, there were no pictures on Facebook, okay, but the police boat was towed in numerous times, okay, over the years, and needed repowering, whatever else it needed. At no charge to the town, no big deal, whatever, we all work together. So single engine boat is a really bad idea, bad idea. Secondly, the boat needs to be 26 feet, 25 or 26 feet to be able to go out. I'll challenge any of you to go in our 21 foot, I have a 21 foot Boston whaler, okay, and I'll call you when it's bad, when it's foggy, and when it's rolling, and they're breaking 6-8 footers at the mouth of the Connecticut River. I'll take any one of you out there, okay? But it won't be a 21 foot boat because we wouldn't make it back. So it needs to be a large enough boat to be able to go out there. Lastly, say one more time, the busiest recreational boating river on the east coast of the United States, right here, Old Saybrook, Connecticut River. And it's absolute insanity that this town doesn't have a police boat. You should have a police boat. Last thing, if one of your family members, your wife, your daughter, your husband, whoever, fell off a boat, slipped into the river on the side of the riverbanks while they were fishing, fell off the jetty while they were crabbing. Would you want one boat coming out to help them, or would you want two? I think you'd all say you want two. This town needs two boats, a police boat and a fire boat.
Just something in passing. Everyone talks about when it's foggy, when the winds are whipping around, the waves are so high. Who in the world should be out there? The police boat shouldn't be out patrolling in those conditions. If you are concerned about your crew, you wouldn't send them out in that weather. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't take the 21-foot Zodiac out into those conditions. So, yeah, you're right, I wouldn't accept the invitation, but this is what I'm talking about. This is really getting exaggerated. I mean, I think the chief has to consider his crew, and would you expect them to be patrolling under those conditions? I don't think so. I mean, if you need a rescue boat, you call the fire department or the police. You can respond to an emergency phone call and say, hey, listen, we gotta get a hold of the fire department now because we're out of our depth. I mean, no pun intended there. But do you see what I mean? What's appropriate and what's not appropriate, what action to take and what action not to take? We need communication.
Is there any other comment? Yes?
Yeah, I've sat here and tried to be reasonably quiet. However, I want to point out some of the technical issues of the people that are picking out boats, and also some of the issues of weather and whatnot. I own a business here in town. I also have been a master mariner for over 50 years. I have an unlimited ocean license, which means I can run any ship anywhere in the world, anytime. And I wouldn't presume to suggest to someone else what kind of boat they get. I've commanded vessels from my college weekend job. I was the captain of a 69-foot fireboat in Baltimore Harbor, up to 540-foot research vessel. I'm also a marine engineer. You mentioned Metal Shark a few minutes ago. I designed the propulsion for the last two of the large vessels that they've launched. And still, I wouldn't tell you what to buy for a boat because it's very subjective and only the people that operate it really know. You suggested you've seen on eBay a center console for $40,000. Probably true. You've seen a rubber hull or a rigid hull inflatable for $54,000. Also very true. But they're not designed for the type of operation that a patrol vessel would call for. They're pleasure boats, and the ones that you're seeing on eBay for $15,000 or $20,000. In the industry, we would call them the flexible flyers, because the hulls are relatively thin. They're designed for pleasure boat use, recreational use. The hulls are thin. They don't stand up to the type of weather that we get here. And weather is important. I don't know if any of you remember the cross rip, which was in the summertime. She was the inter-island ferry between Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Every fall, I would go up and get the cross rip and bring her here. She would run the Connecticut River all winter from out of Deep River. And I can remember a day on the dock off of Dock and Dime. We've got a 134-foot boat on that little dock. And we stopped there to make some technical adjustments to the engines. After we get off the dock, in a matter of less than 4 minutes, the weather went from reasonably calm, overcast, to a squall with 45-knot winds. It can happen in a very, very short period of time. So having a vessel capable of all weather is important. Because if you're on a patrol and you're off of Cornfield Point and the weather changes like that, it'd be kind of nice to be able to get back into the river. You're talking about the Little Zodiac in Hartford. I happen to know that boat. I happen to know the Milford boat you talked about a little while ago. The Little Zodiac in Hartford is not a patrol vessel. It's an auxiliary vessel. You can throw a rock across the Connecticut River at Hartford. I've talked to you about the cross rip. Turning her around from the dock in Hartford is a chore, because you've got more boat than you've got river. The same vessel would not work down here. And the reason that they're talking about a 26-foot boat is because of the shape of the Long Island Sound. It's a relatively shallow and long body of water. The predominant winds are going to come out of the east, the northeast and the east, which starts to build the wave period. The wave period in the Sound is relatively short and choppy. So you get waves that are 4 feet high, but they're only 4 feet apart. It's a far different sea than being out on open water. When you can be at a 25-foot sea, you've got a 25-foot high wave, but you've got a wave period of 1.5 miles. You could go out there in a rubber duck and still float. You can't do that in Long Island Sound. I wouldn't sit in Long Island Sound in a boat smaller than 25 feet. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just make 2 points. One, stay out of the Sound. And 2, this is such an issue around here that maybe it should go to referendum rather than a town meeting. Because the people will decide.
Make a motion, we close the comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. My only comment is I would ask everyone on the board to digest all the information that we've heard tonight. We can talk about it more at our next meeting. But certainly, if anything comes up, if you find anything, or you're researching anything, please disseminate the information. That's my only comment. Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.